Well, that game was a load of rubbish, wasn't it? Hello, everyone, and welcome to my review of Rennes versus Tottenham, which happened several hours ago, and I've had time to digest just what went wrong. I don't know what it is with this club, but we just seem to be going backwards in the last 3 or 4 years, and it just seems to be getting worse. I know that we we've had a bit of a tough time recently with the Crystal Palace loss. But this one just started off so well for the first 10 minutes or so, as we seem to do, and then we go ahead and it just seems to fall apart as the game goes on. I'm at a loss of what to say. So I don't know where this video is going to end up. But I was watching the Leicester Napoli game afterwards, and it was just such a joy to watch. Even though Leicester unfortunately drew the game because in the last 3 minutes they conceded a header from Victor Osimhen, who's been causing them trouble all game. Leicester, could have quite easily won that on another day. 4 or 5-2. It was a thoroughly enjoyable game to watch, and then you sit down and watch, the highlights of the Spurs game, and there's really nothing that is anything like what Leicester are playing. And a few years ago, Leicester were a side that were behind us, and we were beating the likes of Dortmund and Real Madrid at home and away. Really getting up in the top echelons of European football, and it was we drew at the Nou Camp against Barcelona, and now we're struggling to beat teams that really should be beaten. You look at West Ham, who for years have been marginally below us. Quite a fair way actually, and now they're beating the same opposition that we lost to, away from home, and quite convincingly. I really don't know what the plan is at Tottenham, and I mean that as a club. I mean, I can see, what Nuno's trying to do with playing the flat three in midfield. He's trying to get runners from midfield, because I don't think we actually have any defensive midfielders. They're more holding, as in just keeping the opposition away rather than actually defending the box. Højbjerg isn't, he's not a Kante. He's more of a dynamic box to box midfielder, and that seems to be what we have. Højbjerg, Skip, Winks, they're all very much similar. Similar players. They, sort of deep line playmakers, if you will. Højbjerg isn't the defensive player like a Kante or a Fabinho or trying to think of other players, of Busquets, a Kimmich. He's more of a Frankie de Jong type player, and it's just when you've got so many in midfield that do the same job, I struggle to see how things change. The back four that we had today is probably the most painfully mid-table defence I've seen. Doherty is a professional football player at the very least, but he just seems completely shot of confidence. I really don't see him as what he was when he was at Wolves a couple of years ago. Actually, ironically, the best game he's played at White Hart Lane, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, is when It was at Wolves when they won 3-2, which is the last game that, fans were allowed in before the pandemic. He's not put in a performance, that even warrants, being even at Wolves as a mid-table side as they were last year. It's really perplexing how, we've seen, we'll come good under Nuno. He'll be much better than he is, and it just hasn't happened for him. And it's just, our recruitment is not in the right place. Tanganga played much better than he did against Palace, so I suppose that is one positive. And having Davis and Doherty as your two fullbacks is like having two safety nets. It's just not what you would do if you want to go out there to win the game. It felt like another performance where we go 1-0 up and then we just sit back, and then we made Rennes look like Barcelona at times, and they have some decent players. Bourgeois in midfield I thought was excellent. Spotted him a couple of years ago playing at Rennes, and he was really good. Our defenders seem to get bullied, and that's purely because there's no protection for the back four, because nobody has that single minded approach to hold and stay back. So I don't really see that defence and midfield working again. I don't see why we're not playing this either 4-3-2-1 or 4-2-3-1 even, or even go into a 3-4-3. We could quite easily play three of our defenders, and of course we're missing Sanchez and Romero and Dyer. But if there's protection in front of the midfield, then chances will come. So we've got to definitely in the transfer window find a completely defensive midfielder. Probably I'm just trying to think of someone. Maybe Wilfred Ndidi. I know it would be a step down for him because he's playing Europa League with Leicester, but he's that kind of player that you need to shield the defence. And I know he got sent off today, but the refs in Europe seem to have a completely different perspective on stuff. I thought Ndombele, again, considering he's not played a game since April, he really did well, considering he had that little time, and he played 77 minutes, and there were touches there of real class, and you could see if he was put further forward into a more attacking role, maybe starting deep but only focused on attacking, it could break the lines and go between the half spaces, because some of the touches were probably the most enjoyable thing about the whole game. I just find in this whole midfield of the same thing. I can't remember. Skip played well, and it's his birthday, so happy birthday, Skip. But it's just when you've got the defence of the same, the midfield of the same even. Sorry, it's just so static. We're so slow and so laborious. It's a bit like just going through the motions. And I thought Brian Hill was excellent as well, and so was Lucas Moura. you can see with Lucas, he wants to, wants to play for the fans, for the club, for the team. He should be one of the first names on the team sheet. And then you've got the conundrum of Harry Kane, who just seems to be just not with it. It's like he's, he was like a polished, like a trophy. You'd polish it all the time. It was your family heirloom as such, and you polished it every week. And all of a sudden you don't go polishing it for 3 or 4 weeks, and it suddenly looks all rusty, and it just doesn't seem as appealing as it once was. And it seems a bit like that with Harry at the moment, that it just doesn't seem that it's Harry Kane, the Tottenham fan, playing for Tottenham. It just seems like Harry Kane is playing for Tottenham because he's employed by Tottenham. So it's just, I don't know, it's just, I can see a pattern of play where, Nuno's trying to make runners from midfield, and, the wingers seem to take it upon themselves to do stuff, and we're pressing from midfield rather than the front three. But there's no width to our play. It's all congested through the middle, and there's countless amount of times where a switch of play was on, to the opposite fullback or the opposite winger, where you would have Davis on the left hand side. He was free, but Doherty wouldn't see him, or it would be Bergwijn on the left side, and he would be free, but then you just wouldn't see it. And it's annoying when you can see as a Tottenham fan that things are not going well, and there's no risk in our play. You watch all the best side in the world, and watching Leicester, watching Man City, watching Liverpool, even watching Chelsea, even though they do play safe, there's still that element of risk that we just don't seem to take. And then because our back four is not protected enough, when we do make a mistake, i.e. as Doherty would give the ball away, we'd be straight on the back foot, and we'd just lose it in areas which would always cause us problems. And it's just so concerning, that we are now 4 injuries down. Son's out, Romero, Sanchez, Lo Celso, and we've got no real backup. I mean, to be honest with you, I think Dane Scarlett did more in the 20 minutes he was on than Kane did in the whole game. It would be interesting to see, if the fans were allowed to take over for a season. There was a committee of like 10 fans or something, and Daniel Levy asked people, oh, can you take over this, and just while we find a manager. And I can guarantee you, if fans were in charge, the players would buck up their ideas, and the fans actually might enjoy watching the games that we play. I would much rather have us drawn 2-2 or even lost 3-2 if we went for it. It's just, football has become too safe because of the I suppose the rewards of what football brings now. The sponsorship, the money, the Champions League, right? Everyone wants to be in the Champions League. And people say, oh, it's winning trophies, it's doing this, it's doing that. But it's just, being a football fan is about the experiences and watching the games and enjoying yourself. I would much rather, there be games that are like the Everton game that we had in, I think it was the FA Cup, where it was like 6-4. You'd much rather have that than have the 1-0, against Watford or something like that. When you have games that are massive, and you're like playing Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, even Arsenal to an extent, you expect there to be, a little bit of defensive work because they are so lethal on what they have, and it's just, I really don't know. That's why I keep saying because I just don't know what's going on, and it's obviously something from in the club because it doesn't matter who we have in charge. It could be Nuno, and Nuno's a brilliant coach. It wasn't Jose, and people said that wouldn't have worked, and it really didn't. But it could be anyone in charge, and we'd still fail, because it's ingrained in the club. We've got to do this on whatever we've got, and we can't seem to massively improve our squad. You look at some of the signings that, Leicester, even Aston Villa have made. Even Norwich have made some really good signings for the budget they've got. And it's always Tottenham that seem to be the ones that are playing this drab football. We never seem to go for it, and then, who knows, one day we could be 2-0 up within 6 minutes, then we could probably sit back. But it's just finding the right balance and finding players who want to play. Probably 6 players I counted in the whole squad that, would probably, give their all 120%. You could see when Lucas got injured in the second half, he wanted to carry on. He wanted to, make sure the job, was completed. But obviously he got too injured and he just had to come off. But the last thing I want to talk about is the state of the refereeing. I mean, I don't know how many fouls I counted, but there was at least half a dozen where, it could have been yellow carded. And I know that refs now are given, a directive to, make sure there's more contact, and not necessarily being that contact means a foul anymore. But there were some Sunday League agricultural hacks in that game, and I'm just starting to lose interest in everything, really. I mean, it started with Mourinho, but it's, I could see some improvement against Man City, from where Jose was, and again, even Wolves and Watford, and then suddenly we just have 2 games on the bounce. And I know that the European away games are hard, but, and I know that Rennes played Champions League last year, so they're a particularly decent side, but they've lost, several players, like this summer. Camavinga was one of them. I don't think Doku played, or is it Doku? One of their players. He's excellent, but I'm sure he's not from that team, actually, thinking about it. But it's just, we need to take some risk and go for it. If we lost, 2-1 or 3-2, I'm sure fans wouldn't be going, oh, I'd wish we sat back a little bit more. And I know that Nuno is thinking that, it's been very hard for us because of this quarantine and COVID situation. It is unprecedented times, but it's just when you go from, beating the likes of Real Madrid at home, drawing with them away, drawing with Juventus, and then you lose to Dinamo Zagreb in the Europa League, and then you're struggling at the third tier of European competition. We've got Vitesse and Mura next. So, that should be relatively easy. Don't know much about Mura, so I'm going to have a look at them. But if this does continue this safe, steady play that we're currently doing, then I think some of the fans are going to get on the back of Nuno and Daniel Levy quite quickly. There's already mutterings of Nuno out, which I think is completely ludicrous. We've only lost 1 in 5, but it's just, I can see why people think it. It's just a style of play. It's a bit like, going from having, a souped up Ford Fiesta to it suddenly breaking down, and then you get this old Ford Fiesta, as in Jose Mourinho, and it's so slow, and it's so rusty, and it doesn't really go fast. It rattles at 35 miles an hour, and then you get Nuno, which you think, similar kind of car. It's not got any rust on it, but you can see from the minute you buy it, the rust is starting to appear, and the owner's got to be careful, to make sure that it doesn't, infiltrate parts of the car that it hasn't touched, and it's just a bit of a negative time to be a Spurs fan. Wouldn't change it for the world, obviously, but I just hope that we can put up some sort of fight against Chelsea. I'm not going because I'm going to my niece's christening. So thankfully, if it is a bit of a dodgy game, I can hide behind the sofa. Thank you all for joining me for this short, really rant, really. Please like, share and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll hope to see you next time. Have a good one.